July 27th, 1881 was the happiest day in the life of Andrew Carnegie, writes Os Guinness in his book, The Call. He was a Scottish weaver's son, had risen from a bobbin boy in his early years in Pittsburgh, earning $1.20 a week, to become America's king of steel and one of the world's fabled rich men. But he had his heart on going back home one day to show the folks back home how well he had done. When he and his mother and their family were living in Pittsburgh, when he was a young boy, in absolute poverty, they had come to this country to escape the poverty they knew in Scotland and wound up as poor here as they had been before. And one day he found his mother just sobbing in despair because they had nothing. And he took his mother's hands into his own and said, "Mother, don't worry. Someday I'm going to be rich. And we will have a coach pulled by 4 horses, and we will show everyone here how well we've done." And his mother said, "It won't make any difference if we can't show the folks back home how well we've done." And that day, Andrew Carnegie made the vow to himself that one day he and his mother would go back home and show the folks that they had made it. Now, Andrew Carnegie was not like a politician, always wondering, how well do people think of me? He had a reputation of being a ruthless, but there was also a part of him that was tender and sensitive to what people thought of him. Very strange combination in this strong man. He even had his secretary cut out articles in the newspaper that said nice things about him and put them on his desk so he could read them and enjoy them. Carnegie needed approval from certain people, particularly the folks back home. When we talk about our plans and the things we want to do with life and talk about aims and ambitions and achievements, we often overlook the important role of audience. It's not too hard to buck the crowd, to march to a different drummer. It's almost impossible to march to your own drum beat. Most of us, whether we know it or not, do things with an eye to the approval of some person or group, some audience whose approval we want, whose approval, whether they're dead or alive, is important to us. So the question is not whether we have an audience that we're playing to. The question is which audience we want the approval from. We really value the person who seems to make his decisions not based on what anyone thinks, but this internal sense of right and wrong that serves as a compass, or better, as a gyroscope. Have you had one? You know what they look like? You know how they act? That spinning center around framed by loops of metal. And when that thing is spinning, you can turn it any way you want to, and the center stays stable. There are those people who have that gyroscope inside. They look for the approval of what we could call the audience of one. The only approval they're looking for is God's approval. And if He says, "Well done," they're not really concerned with whether other people don't like it. That's a tough place to get to. But it's part of what Jesus said needs to be our motive. In this text today, Jesus calls attention to the motive behind the good things that we do. And He uses 3 examples. In Jesus' time, giving and praying and fasting were considered primary acts of goodness that every godly person should perform. The Pharisees had it down to a science. They were very, very good at it. But they did it in order to be seen by men. They wanted to make a good impression. It would go something like this. May I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in the Lord, I want you to look very carefully. I don't normally do this, you realize, but this morning, I'm going to place a brand new, crisp $50 bill in that offering plate. I'll probably have to forego a mortgage payment, maybe half a mortgage payment, but I believe in the work of the church, and I want to make sure that you know that I believe in the work of the church. There's the 50. Let's hear it for the boy. Come on, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Thank you, thank you. That's one option for giving. The other option is this. The difference is very, very obvious. The Pharisees were masters at making sure that people knew how much they were giving, how much they were praying, how much they were fasting. They made it a point to do this in front of people to impress them with how spiritual they were. The other danger for us is doing good things in order to get people's approval. Not only to impress them, but to get their approval. We have that person, those people that we want to please. We want their approval. And it can lead us to do some foolish and silly things for the sake of getting someone's approval. And so Jesus says, look first at your own heart. Why are you doing this good thing? Is it to impress someone? Is it to get someone's approval? Or are you doing this to get the Father's approval? And that's why he recommends to us the discipline of secrecy. Notice this. He doesn't tell us, only do your giving in private. Look at your motive. And if you have an issue here that you need someone's approval by what you're about to do, don't do it for that person. Do it secretly. The same with your praying, the same with your fasting. With any good work you do it secretly if your need is to impress someone. By doing it secretly, you'll be focused on the Father, and He will give you the approval that you need. I always wondered, Jesus, if I'm supposed to do these things in secret, then help me make sense of this that you said in the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Now, which is it? Am I supposed to do this in front of people so they can see the good thing I'm doing and praise God? Or am I supposed to do this in secret so that nobody will see it and then I'll have to worry about trying to get people's approval? Which one is it? And Jesus said, you're missing the point. The point is not whether or not you do it in public or whether you do it in private. Look at your heart. Look at the lights that are above us. Are they working hard? Are they trying desperately to impress you with the way they're glowing? They're just being what they are. They're lights. And Jesus is calling us to the very same thing by being who you are. Good works will just naturally flow out of you. You'll want to do this thing that is good for someone. That's how you can give without letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. It comes from you so naturally that it's not an issue anymore. You're not trying to please. You're not trying to impress. The motive of your heart is to please the Father and just be what you are. Children of God, spending that time alone with the Father will teach us how much He approves us and give us the freedom to be who we are, no matter who's watching. Practice living your life before the audience of one. Will you pray with me?